Well, hello, General Hospital Daily Recap fans. Today's daily recap is for Tuesday, December the 9th, 2025. Today was a okay, episode today, for Tuesday. You could tell we're not in sweeps right now, right? Valentine, he Carly came down the stairs and there he was inside the house. And she's like, "What are you doing in here?" He goes, "It was cold in that shed." He's like, "I'm freezing." And so she goes, "There were blankets in the shed." He said, "Those were tarps, plastic tarps." He said, "Those are not blankets. And you don't get warm with that." Oh, he says, "Look." No, he came walking in. That's what happened. He just comes walking through the door, and Cardi says, "What are you doing in here?" He goes, "Jocelyn left." And she said, "5 minutes ago? What if she forgot something and is coming back?" He goes, "She's not." So anyway, he told her, "And I have already found a good hiding place inside of this house where I won't be found." So she goes, "Oh no, the shed was just fine." And that's when he went into, "No, it was not fine, and I ain't staying out there." So she goes, Donna is coming home today. I have an 8-year old I have to think about." He says, "And if I can't evade an 8-year old, I got a problem." Right? And so she says, "Okay, look, the best I could do is you could stay in the attic." And he looked at her like, "Okay, that's in the house at least." And let's face it, y'all, heat rises to the top. He'll be warm, right? He'll have it all fixed up, okay, in the top. So he goes, "I need you to do something for me." She's like, "Wait, what?" He says, "I need you to get a message to Anna." She says, "I can't get a message to Anna." "What do you mean you can't get a message to Anna?" She says, Anna left town on a WSB mission." And he looked, he said, she what? Then, "Oh no, Jack Brennan has arranged this." And so she goes, "I don't think so." Jack seemed genuinely surprised when he got the message that Anna, a message from her that she was leaving or had left. And Valentine just looked at her. And when Carly said that, I said, "Carly, he seems genuinely surprised at every doggone thing you tell him about Jocelyn. If it wasn't for the fact that you know the skinny on Jack Brennan, you would still be believing everything he tells you, right?" So he goes, "Hmm." He goes, "And I need you to do something else." And she goes, "Okay, what?" So he holds up a key. And she goes, "What is that?" And he goes, "The key." And then he said some name attached to it. So the next scene with it, it had he had tied this blue ribbon, tiny ribbon around it. He says, "I need you to get this key to Charlotte." Carly said, "For one thing, cops are all around Lulu's place and WSB. Um, how am I supposed to give something to Charlotte and her not know that you're not here? She would know that I've had contact with you." He said, "I didn't say give this to Charlotte. I said place this, hide it somewhere, place it. Charlotte will find it." She says, "Well, if I hide it, how is she going to find it?" He said, "Because I trained my daughter well, and she's going to be looking for clues from me, for signals from me. This blue sash around this key ribbon means I'm safe Don't do anything, hold tight. He says, now a red one means get ready because we're going to be leaving soon. He said, but this blue one will ease her mind and she'll know I'm safe. So Carly's like, okay. So she goes to Lulu's. Now, mind you, Dante had been there. Nathan ends up leaving with Dante. And Charlotte asked, did you get any news? Have you heard anything about my father? And Dante's like, no, we haven't yet. So now Carly goes over and Nathan and Dante are there getting ready to leave. And she says, I'm here checking on Lulu. And Lulu was actually standing on the porch. And so Dante and Nathan says, okay, well, we're getting ready to leave. So Carly goes up to Lulu and they go in the house and she goes, how you holding up? And oh, Lulu's so happy, just unburdening herself on Carly, right? About her worries and she's worried about Valentine and this, that, and the other. And so she goes, how's Charlotte? She goes, Charlotte told me that if her father wanted her to pretty much go with him, that she probably would. Oh, no, So Carly's just looking at her. And at that time, Jack comes banging on the door. So Lulu opens the door and she sees it's Jack. She's like, what are you doing here? And so he looks at Carly. He goes, oh, I didn't know you would be here. And Carly says, I'm here checking on Lulu, seeing how she's holding up. That's her cousin, right? And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, I need to speak to Lulu in private, if you don't mind. And Carly says, look, call me if you need me for anything, okay? And Lulu's like, thank you. Okay. So Carly goes outside. She kind of looks around as she's walking outside, drops her glove. Oopsie, accidentally. So when she bends down to pick the glove up, she takes the key and pushes it kind of under, there's the railing off Lulu's porch that they sit on or lean against the kids, right? She put it right under there. So she picks up her glove, puts it, walks away. Um, Brennan tells Lulu, I'm here to question Charlotte. And she's like, absolutely not. She said, you played right into Valentine's hands. And it all started with he will want to see he wants to see his daughter. That was his demand. She said, no, his demand was to get you to get him out here, transfer him so he could escape. And now my daughter's in jeopardy. So Charlotte comes down the stairs. That's okay, Mom. I'll speak to him. Lulu's just looking. So he's saying, have you heard from your father? She's like, nope. And he says, has your father contacted you? And Charlotte says, the police took my phone. Brennan looked at her. He said, your father would never contact you via your phone. And Charlotte just looked at him like, oh, you know that, huh? Oh, well, whatever. Right? And Lulu's looking. So he ends up trying to like guilt Charlotte, saying it's imperative that I capture your father. I'm trying to keep him safe. He's a fugitive. And, if you don't cooperate, how your father would move, where he would hide. And, if you don't cooperate with me, I can't guarantee that his capture is going to be safe. And Lulu says, okay, whoa, 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 that's enough, right? She's looked at Charlotte. She says, Charlotte, go back up to your room. And Charlotte said, I just came down from my room. Can't I just go back on the porch? So Lulu says, okay, go on the porch, but don't go any further than that. You stay where I can see you. So Charlotte goes outside. Lulu shuts that door. She says, don't you ever, ever try to threaten my daughter again, or try to guilt her into thinking if anything happens to her father who is a fugitive, would be her fault. She goes, "Don't you ever, who do you think you are? It's your fault that Valentine has escaped." Brenna's just standing there, right? And I thought, go ahead, Lulu. You doggone right. Because I'm like, what's he saying to that girl? Right? What? So she mama bared him. And Charlotte is pouting, sitting on the chair on the patio. And she looks down and she sees something a little blue down there. So she leans down. She slides her hand under there. She picks up the key and she looks at it. And once she looked at it, she's smiling because she knew what that meant. She and Valentine said, no, she'll find it and she'll know what it means. And she sure did, right? So, I mean, that kind of made me smile, even though it's a dangerous situation. He prepared that girl for any old thing, which no child, let's be real, everybody, no child should ever be on the run with a parent as a fugitive. That is just no way to live. It's not. So I don't want you to think you're glorifying Valentine and Charlotte out there. I'm not. I'm just saying, look, she sure didn't know. She learned her lessons well from her papa. Um, then we have Mac was back today for however long his health is gonna, the actor, his health is gonna hold up. Um, but he had said, yeah, they had just come from seeing Maxie, the family, and he says he's spending so much time going back and forth being with Maxie. He was talking to Emma because Emma came in and said, Uncle Mac, I heard from my grandma. And he looked, he goes, Anna? She goes, yeah. She said that she's fine. Happy, show me happy Thanksgiving. And she didn't know if or when she'd be able to call me, again. And he asked her a question. She goes, oh, no, no, it was a voicemail. I didn't speak to my grandma personally. When I got up, the voicemail was on my phone, right? So, they're just accepting that like it's gold. So they showed Anna. Anna's in a little like studio apartment set up, a little dark, but it's with a double pane glass where she's being watched, right? Almost like a police interrogation room just set up like an apartment, like a little apartment. She was doing some kind of meditation on the ground when the camera came to her. And then I don't know about you all. I don't know if you felt like I felt when she was, had her eyes closed, meditating, and then she kind of leaned back a bit and opened her eyes. And then she kind of almost like, people go, somebody's hypnotized and they like, ooh, okay, what's happening? To me, I felt that's what was happening there, right? And then she kind of leaned down again and she kind of stretched and she stood up and then she starts banging on the glass saying, what, what are you doing? Let me out of here, yelling to try to get out. And I'm thinking, is she being brainwashed? At first, the way she looked, I thought, is that her sister? I don't know what is going on with the Anna situation, but it didn't feel like she was just in a Zen state of meditation. It was almost like she was like, "Was where am I?" Right? So if you all felt that way and caught that, put that in comment corner because maybe that was just me reading a little too much into it. Um, so anyway, they showed Anna. And Valentine, all he's talking about is Anna. Because Carly said, okay, and just how long do you plan on being here? He said, until Anna returns. No, you're not. Right? No, you're not. We coming up with a better solution than this, right? So anyway, that was the Carly Valentine Charlotte situation. Anna. Now we also have Britt. She wakes up, Jason is sitting in the chair and he says, "Good morning." She looks over at him, her head is pounding and hurting, and she's saying, "Did I bang my head against the wall?" And he says, "No, it's all the alcohol you drank. That's why you feeling like that." So he gives her a glass of water and she's like, "What happened?" And he goes, "Well, what do you remember?" "I remember having a good time with that Cody guy, but then you showed up and ruined it." She's just being Brit. And he ends up telling her, he goes, "Yeah, I brought you back. You had way too much to drink." Because he goes, "Yeah, oh, you were having a good time until you weren't." Right? And he says, "I brought you back here." He says, "And I also had to give you, your medicine, your dose of medicine. I gave you your injection." And she looked at him. He says, "There was no instructions on the vial. You were very drunk. I hope you told me the right dosage. You told me 2 millimeters." And she says, "It is 2 millimeters." She says, "I don't care how drunk I am or how out of it I am. 2 millimeters have been etched into my brain, right?" So she said, "Thank you for that." And then she's like, "Look, I really need a shower. Can you go?" And he says, "Well, yeah, but I need you to answer questions, a couple of questions or a question." And so she looked at him, she said, "You want to know," maybe he said a couple questions, "what kind of medicine it is and where did I get it?" And he looked at her, he says, "Yeah, I would like to know that. However, you will tell me that information when you want to tell me that information." He says, "What I want to know, Britt, is the way you were drinking is like you were trying to drown out something or like you're running from something. Something really upset you." He said, "What was it?" And she just looked at him. She just looked at him. And she goes, "You're right. Something did upset me." And I forget what Britt said after, because you knew she wasn't going to tell him. So once Britt starts talking, I'm thinking, you ain't telling him yet. So I'm half doing a, not even paying too much attention to her. So needless to say, she didn't tell him nothing, right? And she said, "Thank you so much for looking after me and last night and being there for me." And he goes, "Of course, right?" So Laura, you see in the picture, she goes to Sonny's and they're talking, comparing Sidwell visits. And she was saying, "Sonny, I am so, so sorry. This is all my fault. When I found Dalton, you were the person I called. I panicked. And now you're in Sidwell's crosshairs. He told me I was the target. And when I called you, that was a bonus. And now he has leverage over you. I am so sorry, Sonny." I mean, she says, "And I know I can't just go now to the police because it's not just me. If I go down, you go down, and I'm not going to do that to you." And he goes, "Laura, look, I'm glad you called me." And she's like, "What? After look at this mess we're in. How could you say that?" He said, "Because we're going to handle Sidwell." He said, "Laura, remember back in the day when you and Luke first came back to town and met me, because I guess that's when he had first arrived." He says, "You two were on the run from Frank, right?" He says, "We teamed up, the three of us, and we took Frank down. We made a plan and we stuck to it and we made it happen." He said, "The same thing with Sidwell, Laura. We don't fully know what his purpose is in Port Charles and what is his ultimate goal, but we're going to find out. And now Jason comes. He says, we're going to find out. He says, but it's important that Sidwell, because he goes, oh, Sidwell, he's going to have me do illegal stuff. He says, and the next request is going to be more illegal and more dangerous than the last. He goes, oh, I know what he's about. He's going to have you probably push through that measure C and whatever else. She goes, but Sonny, what if he asked me to do something that I just can't live with myself from? And he says, one step at a time, Laura. He's not going to start off asking you to do something like that right off the bat. He goes, it'll be one step at a time. And while you're reluctantly, because you're going to be reluctant, naturally, while you reluctantly agree to go along with him, you're able to take your time because he knows you're reluctant. Okay? He said, you're buying me time to make a plan. I just need time. And I'm thinking, well, doggone it, you had all how much time? You still couldn't figure out who blew up your doggone apartment, firebombed it, right? And so Jason says, okay. Sonny says, oh, look, told Jason and Laura, I've already put in the works, making plans to sell him my peers. And he says, and Jason, you're going to handle like the little requests that Sidwell's going to ask of us. Because, Sonny's like, shh, I ain't doing nothing unmob boss like, period. I'm not your underling. You may submit a request to me and my organization, and I'm going to have my organization carry it out, right? So he goes, and you're going to do almost like he said, the grunt work. And Jason says, okay, I will handle things. I will try to make sure, handle them as safe as I possibly can, right? And so he goes, but we're gonna find out. He goes, Laura, can you do this? Can we work together? We need to know. There's something he really wants, ultimately. There's something he's really up to. We're gonna find out what it is. And when we do, that's our end to be able to take him down. He goes, once he feels that we're comfortably accepting him being in charge and fulfilling his request, he's going to let his guard down. He says, that's what I'm saying, Lord, we got time because he knows we don't want to do it. But we work it. So she goes, yes, absolutely yes, I can do this. And I thought, there you go, Laura. Come on, Laura Spencer. Let's get that Spencer back. Because when it was you and Luke, y'all were thinking all kind of stuff. Okay? Having to fight them Cassadines and everything else. And it wasn't just Frank. It was the Cassadines you had to fight too. So you can do this, Laura. So anyway, that's cool. They're getting ready. It's almost like every summer, pretty much, there used to be some kind of adventure. This is like a winter adventure. And that's kind of what I like about that. Now, they just need to tie up the Drew and Willow situation because I'm sick of it. That storyline has been well over a year now, and it needs to just be squashed. They're just done with it. And this who shot Drew out of the blue crap, that needs to be gone too. It's ridiculous. So Marco shows up at Britt's and she goes, now is not a good time, Mr. Rios. She's at her door, like, "Ugh, no." He just walks right on by her and she looks at him. She says, well, come in, why don't you? And he turned and he's like, this is the new address to my father's new lab after the last two of Dalton's labs are compromised. The inside is the key fob to let you in. You are in full control of this lab. And my father expects results. And Marco's like, our operation, blah, blah, blah. Marco was taking full ownership of being knee deep in this. And so he goes, we expect you to be at work tomorrow at 9 a.m. She goes, I can't go tomorrow at 9 a.m. I have to work. He looked at her. He says, no, you don't. And she looked at him. She says, what are you doing? Are you spying on me? He goes, oh, yeah, I'm monitoring you. He says, after the way you acted in Croatia at the Five Poppies, oh, you're going to be in line, Miss Westbourne. So she goes, don't forget, you all need me to finish this work. And Marco said, don't you forget that everybody is replaceable, right? Everybody. He says, ask Professor Dalton. You know, and Britt just looked at him. He said, so tomorrow, 9 a.m., be there. And he turned and he walked away. And I thought, good. I'm glad you really, really knee deep in this. But what's funny is I think it ended up, because remember when Natalia was alive, she kept going to Sidwell saying, don't ever get Marco involved in your business. And Sidwell's like, Marco is not involved with my business. He only handles my legitimate businesses, Natalia, right? I think Sidwell has just drawn Marco in more and more, especially after he killed the judge and he told Marco, oh, I didn't kill the judge, you did. And Marco was like, wait, huh? Yeah, yeah. Your hands are dirty, buddy. So you might as well embrace the mud. And let's wallow in that mud, Marco. So now let's go to Alexis. Marco was over at Alexis's place. She was handing him more case files. She's turning more of her cases over to him because Willow's trial's coming up soon and she's got to really hammer in her defense. And so she goes, thank you so much, for doing this. And he says, no, not a problem. And so the assistant brought some coffee in and she came in, I forget her name. And she's there and she tells Alexis, do you want me to stay? Because I can be a good buffer between you and the congressman. I know things are strained between you two. And she goes, you know what? Yeah, you can be a good buffer. And Marco was gonna leave, but Marco wasn't running out the door. So Drew comes knocking on the door, him and Willow. They come in, and the first thing he says, what part about a private meeting don't you understand? And Alexis just looks at him. And Willow kind of looks at him, but whatever, right? So he steps down the stairs and he's saying, Alexis says, well, we could have done this at my office. He goes, no, you know how I feel about that. Diane is representing Michael, and she would be listening. I don't want her privy to any of our defense because she would use, the knowledge she gets from us discussing the case in the office, to her benefit. And Alexis says, I assure you, Diane would never do that, but whatever, we can do it here. So he walks over to Marco, gets in Marco's face, and said, you need to get out now. So Marco looks at him. Marco says, I don't work for you. I'm an associate of Miller and Davis. He goes, but I'm telling you to get out. So Marco looks at him. Marco says, well, I also represent my father's interest. Okay. And my father would definitely want to know that his interests are being looked after. So he looks at Drew. And Drew's like, oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. He said, Sidwell. Mm-hmm. So he's just standing there. Marco effectively shut him down, right? But Marco says, but listen, I have a meeting to get to anyway. I was on my way out. And he looks at Drew and he walks by. But he's looking at Drew like, don't think my father won't hear about the way you thought you could talk to me. Mm-hmm. And Drew knew it. Because as Marco's walking by Drew going to the front door, Drew kind of glances at Marco walking by and kind of glances at Willow like, yeah, yeah, Drew. Yeah. So anyway, he then looks at the Alexa's assistant and says, okay, and now it's time for you to go too. And so she says, well, listen, I was here because I felt we could do this kind of like a mock trial, and I'm the jury. You kind of could get a feel of what the jury might think about, statements and what's being said. And he goes, no, it's private. And Willow says, wait a minute. I like that idea. I would like that from a third party. So Drew looked at Willow and said, well, okay, you can stay. So Alexis says, all right, let's start. She says, I want you to take me to the night that you got shot. I don't want to talk about that night. I don't even want to think about it. Alexis says, listen, Drew, the first thing the ADA is going to do is have you talk about it. First thing she's going to do. We need to go over what you're going to say. So, okay, he went through his steps and everything up until, he got shot in the back. He says the pain didn't start. He goes, I heard the gunshot, but the pain didn't start right away. And next thing I know, they were replaying the scene, right? I'm falling to the ground. He says, and once I hit the ground, the pain started. And Alexis says, did you see your shooter? He says, no, he shot me from the back, the coward. And then Alexis says, okay, then what did he do? And I thought, oh, no, 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 no. See, why isn't it what did he or she do? He didn't see who shot him. But everything after that was what did he do? And then, so then she says, okay. And then the second shot, he says, yeah, I felt that. And so she goes, when you got shot the second time, do you remember anything? What may have what did you see anything? Did you remember something? And Drew was like, wait, wait, I think I do remember something. And so first thing Willow did, what? What do you remember, Drew? And I'm thinking, uh-huh. And he looked and he stood up. He goes, you know what? no, I thought I remembered something, but no, the full memory's not coming to me. And I'm thinking, you liar. You remember that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star ringtone playing? Oh yeah. From that point, just the way he looked on his face was like, oh shoot, you did do that, right? But he says, no, I don't remember. So Alexis says, well, look, you need to keep working on retrieving that memory. So she goes, okay, but now, let's go into, he goes, no, it doesn't matter because when I'm on the stage, I'm going to let them know that there is no way that Willow could have shot me. 100% no way. But who could have shot me? No, not who, but who did shoot me was Michael Corinthos. And Willow looked at Drew, and Alexis stood up and she threw her paper pad down on her coffee table. She says, you absolutely will not say that. You will not say that, Drew. If you say that, because you have no proof that Michael did it, you didn't see the shooter. For you to try to now shift the blame onto him, it's going to make the jury think you're trying to shift the blame or the attention away from Willow, and it makes her look guiltier. Okay? And what's going to happen? The DA is going to pretty much mitigate your whole statement up there. You're going to do harm doing that. She goes, it is not my job, Drew. No, she goes, Mike, he says, no, Michael did it. We all know, everybody in this room knows Michael shot me. Alexis says, there is no evidence of that. And it's my job, and this is a winning strategy, is that the PCPD rushed to judgment when arresting Willow. They did not seriously look at any other suspects. They mishandled the case. And it is my job to point out, get multiple people that had motive to want you dead. It is not my job, Drew, to single out one person and say it was that one person. She goes, that's the wrong move. And Willow looked at Drew. And she goes, and if you do this, you'll compromise Willow's case. So he looked, and Willow says, Drew, because she's thinking, no, you ain't. Because he's still thinking, Michael. She goes, no, no. She goes, Alexis is a good attorney, Drew. You let her do her job. Don't mess this up. So Drew looked at Alexis. She looked at Willow and he looked at Alexis and he goes, you better be right. And you better get Willow acquitted of this. And she says, as long as you don't sabotage it, I got an excellent shot at that. Right? So that was interesting. He just, oh, but now watch later, maybe next week, because this is, no, maybe this week, we might get to see what he remembered, because he remembered it. He 100% remembered it. He just wouldn't say it there, meaning it's somebody he's trying to protect. And or somebody that he, like, remember, in his mind, he just knew it was Curtis, but he's not telling anybody it's Curtis because he wants Michael to go down. Could be somebody completely different, but he ain't saying because he wants Michael to go down for it. So that's pretty much all that happened today in GH land. There were some definite moving pieces today. We got our strong alliance with Sonny and Laura. It's funny. Kev sure didn't come to the meeting with his wife. That's interesting. They wasn't by her side, but that's Kevin. You know, we subject not to see him again, right? So anyway, I'll be back tomorrow with another daily recap. Comment corners off the chain. Keep up the good work with Comment Corner. And I'll be back tomorrow with another daily recap of General Hospital.